Hello and welcome to our special series on FP Live, America Votes, What It Means for the World. I'm Ravi Agrawal, the Editor-in-Chief of Foreign Policy. Today's episode is focused on Africa. And before you even think it, yes, Africa isn't a country, it's a giant continent encompassing a range of different languages, cultures, and histories. But part of what we're doing this week is to look at how the two presidential candidates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, agree and disagree on policies toward various regions of the world. We've looked at the Middle East and Europe already. Now it's time for Africa. I have to start with one sad fact. The last US president to visit Africa was Barack Obama in 2015. Trump did not go. Biden was hoping to go earlier this month to Angola, but he canceled his trip because of Hurricane Milton. Even so, it is fair to point out that Biden has visited the UK 5 times. He's visited elsewhere in Europe, and he's traveled to the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America, sometimes several times, but nowhere in Africa. Would a President Harris give Africa a bit more attention? What about Trump a second time round? Is Africa an area of importance for the United States, or does it show up mostly when it's an arena for competition with China? I have two excellent guests with me today. Martin Kimani is the former Kenyan ambassador to the United Nations. He now runs the Center on International Cooperation at New York University. And Zainab Usman is the inaugural director of the Africa program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. She previously worked at the World Bank. Martin, Zainab, welcome to FP Live.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Martin, so I'm going to come to you first. You are no longer a diplomat, so I know you will be frank. You heard me say it, the last time an American president visited Africa was 2015. Where does Africa figure on America's list of foreign policy priorities?
Well, I happen to have had the privilege of being a Kenyan public servant when President Obama came to visit. And in fact, the job of scripting some of our remarks and engagement through the day fell to me. And so I very much recall having to really closely examine what President Obama was coming to Nairobi to try and achieve. And even then, that was a time when he was driving Power Africa. He was trying to engage throughout the continent. He went to Addis Ababa. He had, as you can recall, visited Cairo to speak about a new deal between the United States and Africa. And that was a really substantive visit. That has not happened since then. And it's broadly, I think, reflective of the fact that Africa continues to not be a high priority for the United States. Now, rhetorically, that's not the case. The Biden administration, more than any previous administration I can recall for a long time, has rhetorically really spoken up the importance of Africa. Cabinet secretaries have traversed the continent from top to bottom. But when you look at the actual partnerships that the United States and African countries have been able to develop through this presidency, they're only modest results for that. My country, Kenya, has been, I think, at the forefront of US attention, and certainly significant efforts have been made, but still Africa, compared to other parts of the world, is still a pretty low priority for this administration.
Zainab, I'm wondering if you agree with that assessment, low priority for the Biden administration, but also, can you put that in context? Has it always been the case?
Sure. I think I would really like to echo Martin's points that Africa, for a variety of reasons, has just not been at the kind of top of the ranking of priorities for the US. I mean, one is also geographical, right? The distance between North America and the African continent just being one. Whereas when you look at the relationship between Africa and Europe, just because they are neighboring continents, it's slightly different. I think another one being that economically, going by whether it's trade numbers or foreign direct investments. You have all of those happening with Africa. There's trade between the US and the African continent, different countries, but there are also foreign direct investment flows to the continent, particularly in the oil and gas industry, but also in other sectors. But this really cannot be compared with, financial flows between the US and Europe, or between the US and a couple of Asian countries and economies. So there's also kind of that hard reality. And to be honest, this has basically always been the case for a very, very long time. This is not to say that individual African countries or individual sectors and industries at various points in time historically have not been important. There's now all of this discussion around, for example, sourcing cobalt or critical minerals from the African continent, but this is not necessarily a new phenomenon. Some of the uranium used in the first bomb was kind of sourced from the Democratic Republic of Congo back in the 1940s, for example. Right. So this has kind of always been the case, but there are different variations, I would say, depending on the sector, depending on the country itself.